Hi everyone, welcome to Masai School. We are a 21st century career-focused coding school. My name is Aman Vats. I'm an engineering graduate from Birla Institute of Technology, Misra. I lead the data structures and algorithm curriculum at Masai School. So let me tell you about this video series. In this video series, we'll be introduced to computer programming. You will learn how to write basic computer programs. You will learn the basic constructs of a computer program, that is data types of variables, conditional statement, loops, functions, everything. And you will be learning this in Python. All right. So this is a very fundamental video to getting started with computer programming in Python. And this video series is actually a part of the pre-course for the full stack developer program at Masai School. And now we have decided to make this course available for all aspiring programmers. So we really hope that it helps you in getting started with computer programming and in Python. So happy coding. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, welcome back. In the last segment, we looked at logical operator that generates a boolean based on a logic. Okay, so in this part, we look at how does our code uses these boolean. I mean, how, because there is essentially, if you see, there is a decision either your code. I mean, in boolean operators. I mean, whenever there is a logical operator being used, your code generates a boolean output, either true or false. Okay, so how do we use these uh, boolean output to take decision? Let's look at that. So far our codes have that we have written executes line by line, but now we want our code to have control. That is, we want our code to take a decision and work according to the decision taken. Okay, so suppose, for example, you are here and the code either generates true or false. Okay, and you want a particular piece of code to be executed based on this decision. So if something is true, then it should generate, I mean, it should execute a particular logic, suppose logic 1. And if that is false, then you wanted to suppose implement logic 2. Okay, so basically based on whether a particular logical operator has returned you a logical operator or a comparison operator has returned you true or false, you want to take different decisions. Okay, so yeah, basically uh, one of these will be executed and the other will not be executed. Okay, so that is when we use conditional statement. We'll soon have a look at it in how do we execute that in Python, but for the time, let's look at how we are doing it. Okay, conceptually. So suppose, I mean, you want your code to take a particular decision if a number provided is odd, and you want to do another particular thing if it is odd. Okay, so let's look at how do we do that in Python. Yeah, so suppose we have a variable num which stores the value, suppose 17, and we want this thing to I mean, we want our code to uh, do a particular logic when this num, the value stored in num, is odd, else we want it to print, I mean, we want it to execute another logic when it is even. So suppose we write if num modulus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so basically what is happening here, in this way we are checking if number num is a even number or not. How? We are taking the remainder by 2 when we are divided by 2, num modulo 2, because we know that even number essentially returns 0 on divided by z2, and it returns 1 on divided by 2. So if num modulus 2 is 0, so this is the syntax. So if this particular thing is true, so we write if, then the logic, which is if true, then it will enter into that particular condition, then a semicolon, and then we enter, and we indent our code by 4 spaces, 1 2 3 4, and then we write whatever we want to do if that condition is true. So we can say it's even, else it's odd. Okay, so what we have done here is we have taken a decision that either your code will enter into this particular condition, or I mean, if it is not correct, then enter this particular condition. Okay. So based on the value of num, we are taking a decision. Okay. So that is what essentially means when we say conditional statement. All right. So we are taking a decision here. If num is divided by 2, then we are entering a particular condition, else we are entering another condition. So let's execute this. Okay. It says it's odd because what has happened, num is 17. So when we check the condition on line number 2, if num modulus 2 is equal to 0, it said no, it's not correct. So it entered the else condition and hence it printed it's odd. Let's make it 16. Let's try to run our code now. Yeah, it prints it's even because at this time our code entered this particular condition. Okay, let's try some other values. So what if I say if num greater than 10, then print it is greater than 10, else print it is smaller than 10. Okay, now so if I run this, it says it is greater than 10. Okay, because what has happened is num has a value of 16, and when you try to check it on line number 2, that if num is greater than 10, so this particular comparison operator returns true. Okay, because num is indeed greater than 10. So whenever this particular condition written on the right of if is true, your code will enter into that particular logic. Okay, suppose we want to print multiple lines here, so whatever you want to do when that particular logic is correct, you type in with indented inside that if, four space indented. Okay, see here. So if I write the control is here, so whatever you write within indented, I mean four space indented to this, will get executed whenever that condition is true. So yeah, the control is here. Let's print the control is not there, and let's put num as 8. Let's run it. So as it's saying, it is smaller than 10 and the control is not there. Why? Because this time num is 8. And when your code enters this particular condition, this returns false because num is not greater than 10. The comparison operator returns false. So your code directly jumps to the else condition and it follows whatever is written inside else. Okay. So what do I mean by written inside else? So whatever is indented by four space inside else is executed. All right. So I hope you got some idea of what exactly do we mean by conditional statement. So basically, we are executing a particular logic if one particular condition is true, and we are executing another logic if another possible condition is true. Okay. So suppose if I say if 6 is greater than 9, print the control is here, else print not there. Let's try to run this code. Yeah, it said not there. Why? Because this particular possible condition is not true. So whenever it's showing not true, it will directly jump into the condition other than that. Okay. So yeah, it's very important to understand this because you will be using it quite often in your code. I mean, whenever you want to take a decision, so you use this particular code. So guys, have a look at the syntax once. So the syntax is if followed by the logic that you want the decision to be taken on, followed by a semicolon, and then the logic that you want to execute when that particular condition is true. Okay, so this is a condition, this is the condition, and this is the code that you have to follow when that condition is true. Okay, so if I may write in plain English, it's like if condition is true, execute logic 1, else execute logic 2. This is not a Python code, this is just to make you understand, but let's leave it for the time. Okay, so this is the if else conditional statement that we wanted to discuss. Now suppose if you have multiple conditions to check your code on. Okay, if you have multiple conditions to check your code on, for example, you don't have just just two possible outputs or two possible conditions to check. If you have suppose 3 4 conditions, okay, so then how do we do it? So suppose if I want to do, if num is greater than 5 and num is lesser than 7, print it lies between 5 and 7. Else if num is greater than equal to 7 and num is less than 10, print it lies between 7 and 10. Else if num is greater than 10 and num is less than say 15, so print it lies between 10 and 15. Else print it's greater than 15. Okay, so let's try to run this code. So let's logically see what is happening there. So first of all, let's look at the syntax of else if. So basically, when you don't have just two paths for the output to have to lie in, okay, suppose you want to follow a particular logic, or you want to do a particular thing when your code follows condition 1, a different thing when your code follows condition 2. So let me share the whiteboard and explain to you what exactly I'm trying to say in this particular thing. So what I'm trying to say here is, suppose you have, here you just said two paths. Suppose your code has 4 or 5 different logics to take decision from. So suppose if a number is just greater than 7, you have to do something else. If the number lies between 7 to 10, you have to do something else. If it lies between 10 to 15, you have to do something else. So you have different parameters to take decision from. Okay, so in that case, you just don't write if else, plain simple if else. In that case, you use if else if. Okay, so basically it allows you to execute different logic based on multiple conditions. So as you can see, if the number is greater than 5 and number is less than 7, you do this particular thing. Else if, because you want to have more conditions, else if number is greater than 7 and number is less than 10, print is light between 7 and 10. Else if number is greater than equal to 10 and number is less than 15, you follow something else. Else in all the other cases, you follow this. So one more thing that you can follow here is, whenever you have multiple conditions like if else if, so whatever is left behind apart from these conditions, this one, this one, this one, all the other conditions apart from these 3 conditions falls inside this 8th line. Okay, so else takes care of all other possibilities, and in that case it's print it's greater than 15. So let's try to execute this code. So it should print, let's see what it does. Yeah, it says it lies between 7 and 10, because what is happening, your code is going on line 2. This particular logic is not correct. Number is greater than 5, but it is not less than 7, and there is and operator, so it's true and false, so it's returning false. When your code enters the condition on line number 4, both the conditions are true, so it just follows it, and it just execute the code which follows that particular condition, and hence it print it lies between 7 and 10. So that is how you take care of multiple conditions within your code. Okay, So just to conclude it, whenever in your code you want to take a decision based on some logic, use conditional statement. You use if followed by the logic based on which you want to take a decision, else if followed by the logic which you want to take a decision, and else which takes care of all the logics. All right. So there's one more thing that I want to cover here, which is very important. So what is the difference between writing if, else if? Instead of that, could we have written something like this? So let's first copy this. Yeah. What do you think would have happened if we have written something like this? Our code would have generated the same result, right? So see, uh, there are two things that has happened. Uh, it lies between 7 and 10, and it's greater than 15. So why it has happened? Because when you write if, each of the lines of the code, all the conditions are checked. But when you write else if one of the condition is met true, your code directly jumps to the last line. What I mean by that is, so suppose in this case, in the last case, your code was hitting on line number 4. So the code, and so it was implementing the line number 5. But in that case, what is happening? So whenever one condition is met, like in this case, the conditional line number 4 is met, so your code directly jumps to line number 10. Okay. So when you have conditional statements, and if one condition is met true, the code or the execution starts from the line where that conditional statement ends. Okay. So since your code just hit the conditional line number 4, it directly jumps to line number 10. But in that case, let me show you which case I'm talking about. In this case, what happens is it checks every step whenever if is encountered. So if this is encountered, so no, it does not hit there. If this is encountered, yes, it hits there, so it got printed. And now this else is just followed by this if. So this else is just following up this if. Okay. So if there is just else and there is no else if, so else just takes decision based on the last if. So this is not met, so your code directly follows this else and it prints this one. Okay. So make sure you structure your conditional statements correctly. There is a sequence of order, and if you are checking two conditions which do not depend on each other, it's better to use if else if instead of using two ifs. Okay. So that's one thing that I wanted to tell you. Now I want to talk about something called nested conditional statements. So look at that. What exactly do I mean by that? So let me share the whiteboard with you. So okay, I'll write here only. So suppose you have okay, so suppose you have in your code, you have to take decision at multiple levels. So suppose you have taken a decision that okay, if this particular condition is met, I'll do this one. If that particular decision met, I'll do something else. Again again you have to take a decision here that okay, if a particular condition is met, I'll do that. If not, then I'll do something else. Okay. So you have to take decision at multiple level. Okay, let me tell you what I mean by that. So suppose you have two numbers, num1 which is 10, num2 which is say 12. So what you have to do is if num1 is equal to num2, you have to print both are equal. Okay. Else, now if they are not equal, then there can be two reasons why they are not equal. It can be due to num1 being greater than num2, or it can be due to num2 being greater than num2. And suppose you want to take a decision based on that. So suppose else if num1 is greater than num2, you print number 1 is greater. Okay. Else print number 2 is greater. Okay, so basically what has happened is you have two values. So first level, you are taking a decision based on if num1 is equal to num2, else you are taking a decision based on if num1 is greater than num2 or num2 is greater than num1. So there is a conditional statement. There is a conditional statement nested within a conditional statement. Okay, you are taking logic. You are taking a logical decision at different levels. Okay, there is a conditional statement here, if else, and again based on that we are taking one more decision. That okay, if this else condition is hit, take a decision based on if this is correct or if this is not correct. Okay, so we are taking decision at one level, then based on that decision we are taking again a decision. Okay, so let's see what it prints. So what it should print is num1, yes it is indeed not greater than uh, num1 is indeed not greater than num2. Okay, num1 is indeed not greater than num2. I mean num1 is indeed not equal to num2. Okay, so your code won't enter the logic on line number 5, but it would enter the else condition because this is not equal. So it would, if it would enter the condition on line number 7, again it would have to take a decision whether num1 is greater than num2 or num2 is greater than num1. So in this case num2 is greater, so it would enter the else condition, that is the condition on line number 10, and accordingly it would print, it would follow the logic on line number 11. So it would print num2 is greater. So let's look at that. So let's try to execute that. Yeah, it's a num2 is greater. Let's change their value. Let's make them equal. Let's run this code again. Yeah, it says both are equal. Let's make num2 10. Yeah, so it's doing number 1 is greater. So you can see what conditional statements are. It basically helps you to take a decision, and based on that decision you do a particular, you follow a particular logic. Basically, so far we were just executing our code line by line, but now we want our execution to happen based on decision. So if one particular decision made, you follow one execution, else you follow some other execution. So this is what exactly happening in this case. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's wrap it up. So we have seen how do we take decision based on conditions, and based on the conditional statements you make your code follow particular logic, and and we take decision, and we have else if else. I mean there are different, if you have to take decision based on multiple things, you include if else if as well. And so the syntax is if followed by the logical condition with a semicolon, and indented in 4 spaces inside is the logic that you want to follow. Okay, so this is how we do it. So that's pretty much it in the conditional statement. Make sure to practice it before moving ahead. And yeah, thank you so much. Let's see you in the next segment.